Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie London. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be a quick look at a technique called chapter hooks and how you can use them to keep the reader enthralled in your story and to keep them turning pages instead of switching off their nightlight and going to sleep. So chapter hook is a technique that is used at the end of a chapter to propel the reader into the next chapter. So a lot of times I see it kind of referenced for the end of the first chapter to keep people reading, but really it's a technique that you should be using kind of a couple of times through your book to keep the momentum going and also to keep the reader guessing about what's going to happen next. So a piece of advice that I received once before I got published from the amazing Valerie Parv, who is a fabulous Australian author with years and years of experience, and she said to a group of us in a workshop I was taking that if you end a chapter with your character going to sleep, then chances are the reader will too. And I thought that was such a great piece of advice, and it's something that I definitely did a lot when I was starting to write. I have a tendency as a very organized, neat kind of person to want to wrap everything up in a nice little bow at the end, but that's actually kind of counterproductive to dragging the reader into your story and getting them really enthralled in what's going on. So this video is just going to be short and sweet. It's a couple of do's and don'ts when it comes to ending your chapters. So something that I like to compare a chapter hook to is television and ad breaks. Now, I watch MasterChef. I love MasterChef, and any of those type of reality shows will use a similar technique. But with MasterChef, when they have like a mystery box challenge or something like that, right as the people are about to lift up their box and you're going to see what's inside, it cuts to an ad break. And it's a very clever technique because what it does is it makes you not want to channel surf because you want to find out what's in that mystery box, what's going to happen next. And so it's a way to keep your attention as a viewer, or in the book's case, as a reader. So a couple of do's. Do introduce some new information right at the end of a chapter that will make your reader want to keep going to find out what happens after that information's been revealed. This is a really great thing. Even if you don't have like a mystery or suspense element or anything like that, there is always some information, some secret, something that's being hidden in a book that will really capture the reader's attention. So instead of dropping that information halfway through the chapter and then having the characters talk about it or do what they need to do with that information, save it for the end. And so a reader is much more likely to stop reading at the end of a chapter because it's sort of more like a checkpoint than they would be halfway through a chapter. So if you can delay that information a little bit and put it towards the end of the chapter, that's going to make them want to start the next chapter and keep going. Throw your characters' lives into chaos right before the end of the chapter so that they are desperate to know what happens next. So if there's anything disastrous that needs to happen, or if there's about to be a big turning point in the story, do that right at the end of the chapter so that the reader has to keep going to find out what happens. You can pose a problem that the characters need to solve in the next chapter or couple of chapters. So this is really great if there's no information to be revealed and everything seems like it's hunky-dory and the characters are having a great time. Then all of a sudden, the proverbial shit hits the fan and they need to do something about that. And so that will give the reader a sense that the pace is picking back up in the story. They're not going to get bored with this lull of everything is going well. And it's a great way to keep them going into the next chapter because they want to find out how the characters are going to solve that problem. End the chapter a little earlier than you think you need to. So what I mean by this is if the characters are having dinner and there's been some exchange, and you don't need to show the characters cleaning up the dishes afterwards or, putting stuff in the dishwasher or going to bed or having their shower. That sort of mundane stuff can definitely be chopped out. This is a really good technique to do if you've already written your book. You go and have a look at the end of your scenes, even if it's not at the end of a chapter break, and think about if you've got any kind of filler activity in there that's not really driving the story forward, cut it out and leave the readers thinking about that great moment that your characters have had together or that revelation, rather than sort of sending them off to sleep with that boring stuff at the end. And a couple of things to avoid. So firstly, don't feel like you need to tie everything up at the end of the chapter like I used to do, and make everything neat and tidy and kind of hand everything to the reader in a nice little package. That kills the tension in the story. So there's nothing left to wonder about if you've kind of wrapped everything up, and they may think that nothing else is going to happen in the next chapter, even if you as the writer know that you've got something great coming. Leave them wondering. Don't send your characters off to bed unless it's a Blaze book and they're going to be doing something fun in that bed. But seriously, you don't have to end the chapter with the character going to sleep. Have your characters reflecting on what's just happened. This is definitely something I've seen with kind of newer writers when they're still learning how to get all the information out there and figure out how to grow and develop their characters, is that sometimes there'll be this repetition of action happens and then the characters dwell and think on it, then action happens and the characters think and dwell. And there is definitely techniques that you can use to kind of manage your pacing and the ups and downs in your story, but don't have them reflecting on what's just happened and it be a complete internal repeat of the action that's just happened, because that will again kill the pacing and tension of the story, and it won't really entice the reader to go on to the next chapter. And one piece of don't advice, which might seem counterproductive, is don't feel like you have to end every chapter with a big hook. I think that can feel a bit exhausting for the reader if every time they get to the end of the chapter there's a big reveal or something dramatic. That you don't want these hooks to feel like a technique when the reader is reading it. You just want to use them carefully and strategically to keep the reader going, perhaps through the areas of the books. If you've had a chapter that is a little bit slower, you use the hook at the end to kind of get them into a chapter that has more action, and that will keep them reading. So like with any of these techniques, don't overuse them. Think very carefully about where you're going to use them, and don't let the reader know you're using them. This is just a technique for you. The reader shouldn't be able to see what's going on. This is by no means an exhaustive list of different ways to use chapter hooks, but I found this particular technique and piece of advice really interesting and thought it's a great little thing to kind of take your book to the next level. So you can absolutely still use this even if your book is finished and you're in the revising or editing stage. You can have a look, go through your manuscript, have a look at the end of each chapter and think to yourself, if I was reading this book, would this last paragraph or last couple of paragraphs make me want to keep reading? And see where you can identify areas to make those chapter endings just a little bit more exciting. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please give me a thumbs up if you did, so I know to make more videos like this, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for spending time with me today, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.